Good morning, Liberty. It is Wednesday morning, June 5th, 2019. My name is Michael Bolden, broadcasting to you live as we do every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 9:30 a.m. Pacific time from here in my home office and studio in downtown Los Angeles for the 10th Amendment Center. Thank you so much for joining me today. I really appreciate you spending some time with me for this show, whether you're watching live or later on in the archive. Now, on this episode, I want to talk a little bit about a new pilot program to implement or to put TSA-style body scanners in public places in one particular state. I think it's probably pretty clear that when you have a pilot program for something like this, it's because they want to do it on a larger scale. Whether there will be public backlash against it, funding issues, lawsuits, whatever it may be, or maybe the technology isn't ready. We don't know if it's going to expand immediately, but if they're already putting it out there and making it happen, I think this is a warning of what is going to come next. I know I cover facial recognition pretty often on this show, and we know, for example, that the Amazon Recognition facial recognition program is being pushed to law enforcement agencies around the country. We know Orlando specifically implemented one for them. And since then, we've seen other cities like Chicago, D.C., New York, and elsewhere implement facial recognition programs. I'm not sure if they're necessarily using Amazon. So the idea of using a TSA-style body scanner in public places rather than just at the airport, what I think the ACLU calls the airportization of America, where you're always given this idea, this false sense of security by having these scanners and pat-downs of everyone, basically a search of everyone just for going to a place in the public, rather than based on a warrant with probable cause describing the person, place, or thing to be searched or seized. And then I also want to actually a number of people actually emailed me after last week Friday's Fast Friday edition, the top 4 ways that they're spying on you locally. I had a number of people who watch or listen to the show email me with this article. We know there was one in the Salt Lake Tribune last month talking about the implementation. This is going to be in Utah. And I know we ran a blog about this on our site last month as well. But I started looking into it because so many people had emailed me. And again, if you have ideas that you want to see on the show, sometimes I'll do them quickly, sometimes not at all, sometimes later on. Feel free to email team@10thamendmentcenter.com, or better yet, just leave your thoughts in the comments on whatever platform you're watching or listening. I do check those all out, even if I don't necessarily respond to every single one. But so, I started looking into this just because a number of people I respect or really like, that I appreciate their feedback. I'm taking a look at this, and it kind of took me down a rabbit hole. And instead of just a particular pat down or just your regular old surveillance, I thought it was interesting that going through looking at this through the memorandum of understanding between the Attorney General in Utah and the company, which you're going to love the name of this company when we get to it. The name of the company that's providing the technology, I found the reason for it, at least in my perspective, and I guess you can watch it and let me know, or listen and let me know if I'm way off. But specifically, the way I'm looking at this is that it is an attack on concealed carry, specifically. And we're going to get to that in just a little bit. Again, we live stream every Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 9:30 a.m. Pacific time. I will be off next week, Monday. I believe that's the 10th. I'm going to Milwaukee, Wisconsin to see my youngest nephew graduate from high school. I'm pretty excited about that, so I will be out of town over the weekend. I'll be back on Monday here in LA, but I'm just going to be out of touch because I'm getting in pretty late. So I'm taking Monday off from that so I can get to my day-to-day tasks from there. And then I'll be back on Wednesday. So we multi-stream to our channels over at YouTube, Facebook, DLive, Twitch, Periscope? Maybe I said that twice. We also have archives over at 10thamendmentcenter.com/goodmorningliberty, where you can find some other channels like BitChute, for example, and then also our podcast edition, which is on Spotify, iTunes, Google Play, and elsewhere. 10thamendmentcenter.com/goodmorningliberty. And before getting into the goodness, hello to some good people out in the live chat. I appreciate you joining me. I think it's really awesome. Tyler B., EHP Training, Justin Bayola, Denver Libertarian, Promote Liberty all over on YouTube. Loyal Angel, good afternoon to you over on Periscope. Thank you for joining us there. Michael Bogus, Dan Reed, hey buddy. Bill Standard, Pam Rankin, Don Frya, Andrew Nappy, good to see you, Nappy. And then, of course, Ward Lawrence and Holger, Keith, and a few others. I really, really appreciate you being here. Thank you so much. And Frank I as well. So let's get into this. The article that I think first started to really kind of spread this in the alt media community came from a guy or a woman, I'm not sure, from Mass Private Eye. We run a lot of their blog posts here at 10thamendmentcenter.com. It could be a group of people. I'm not sure. They were covering a report from the day before. So this is in late May, just in the last couple of weeks, from the Salt Lake Tribune. Let me pull this up here for those of you watching on the video stream. Police to use TSA-style scanners to spy on people in public places. And I think the message that they're spying on people is absolutely correct. And a lot of the coverage since then, I know there's been some YouTube videos. I've seen a number of blogs talking about this, that it's coming. I know a lot of people warned about this when I used to listen to some more of the conspiracy-minded people years ago that I mean, I don't necessarily keep up with it anymore, but when I used to listen to that, I always heard warnings. Oh, yeah, they're going to put these TSA searches in bus stations. They're going to put it in train stations. They're eventually going to put it in shopping malls. I know for a fact that they are putting in full-body scanners at the entrance of the LA Metro system, the Red Line subway system here in downtown Los Angeles. I think I covered that in an episode on thermal imaging last fall in November. I've got a link to that in the show notes as well, that previous episode. I'm not sure if I mentioned the LA one, but I've heard about this for a long time, that it's coming. It's coming. It's coming. A lot of people warned about this. We start seeing it implemented. Now, it's going to be a larger deal. And I think once the pilot programs come out, it's a huge deal. So they write over here, last week, the Salt Lake Tribune revealed that the Utah... Let me get through that again. It's still morning here on the West Coast, and I haven't had enough coffee. Last week, the Salt Lake Tribune revealed that the Utah Attorney General and law enforcement are partnering with Liberty Defense, that's the name of the company, a 3D image scanning company that makes its money from scanning the public in real time. And they go on. 3D means capturing rich information, size, shape, depth, about the detection space. It can detect any material that has a physical form. And I'm just going to add this. I didn't actually highlight it on the video here, but I got to talk about the name of this. And I love that this blogger, who I think probably comes from at least a little bit on the left end of the spectrum, but I guess maybe I'm being assumptive. So it's good to see this comment. Let's start with their name. Calling yourself Liberty Defense is an affront to liberty-minded Americans who do not want to be secretly spied on by Big Brother. Their tagline, quote, protecting communities and preserving peace of mind, is the exact opposite of what this device does. Like Patriot Act, for example. We know that was, the Patriot Act is not for patriots, certainly. And Obamacare, the Patient Protection Affordable Care Act, is not making healthcare affordable. So they use these terms, and it's not just government, clearly. Obviously, it's government partners like Liberty Defense. So they talk about this, and it's not necessarily that they're spying in private, but I guess it gets crazy. So they'll call you nutcases. They'll say you need a tinfoil hat if you talk about the fact that they have license plate readers that get up to 1,800 pictures of license plates as they pass a fixed location per minute because they don't necessarily see it happen. This is out in your face, and I'm not sure which is worse. I think they're all bad if they are monitoring and spying and searching people without a warrant. So that means you are no longer innocent till proven guilty. Everyone is a suspect society. That is bad news. So they're using this product called HEXWAVE. And this is what Bill Riker, so-called Liberty Defense, the CEO, said. HEXWAVE could be deployed at mass gatherings like concerts, malls, stadiums, public transit stops, and government buildings. Now, mind you, I'm just going through this, how I went through it, and we're going to lead to how it gets to concealed carry, too. Now, according to the Attorney General's Memorandum of Understanding police plan to use HEXWAVE to scan the public for 2 years, in but not limited to. So 2-year test run. And I believe the technology is being provided for free, at least for the state or for government use. I'm not sure if private entities are going to be able to use this for free, but from the MO, MOU, Memorandum of Understanding. There's also MOAs, Memorandum of Agreement, depending on where you are. But these are these kind of behind the scenes. This one was published publicly, very easy to access. They're going to use them in sporting and concert areas, stadium and Olympic venues, primary, secondary, and higher education facilities. We know in New York State, they're starting to implement facial recognition scanners in public schools. They're starting them young because that's how you get them, I guess. 3, places of worship. Facilities and property owned by or affiliated with faith entities. For those of you who are religious, you really want to have a body scanner in your church? They who give up essential liberty for temporary security will get neither and deserve it. The paraphrase of how Ben Franklin so rightly put it a couple hundred years ago. Government office buildings, facilities, and offices, amusement parks, entertainment events, conventions, shows, basically anywhere the public gathers. And this is how they intend to use this stuff. So over in the Salt Lake Tribune, they give you some pictures if you want to take a look. Again, links are in the show notes if you're listening to the podcast or in the archives, and you'll be able to see the pictures and the links to the Salt Lake Tribune and elsewhere to see basically it's artist renderings of how these are going to be. And they say the company's product, HEXWAVE, can be hidden in walls and other structures as it scans for objects like guns, knives, and explosives obscured by clothing or bags, according to a promotional video on the Liberty Defense website. And then I started thinking, I'm like, okay, they're scanning for weapons. And it starts making me think about what's their real goal here. The technology, the Tribune says, as Liberty Defense has described it, appears to, quote, strike the balance between privacy interests on one side and security and safety on the other. HEXWAVE, the Attorney General says, seems to be right in that sweet spot. I didn't know, for example, that the Fourth Amendment said that the right to be secure in your person's house's papers in effect against unreasonable searches and seizures had an if, as long as, or except there was a balance between security and safety. When we know people like Ben Franklin or Benjamin Franklin wouldn't have agreed with something like that. So you can see the entire memorandum here. It's a 5-pager that they have embedded. You can also click the link. There's a link to it in the article from Mass Private Eye as well. I have it highlighted here for those of you watching along. And so it has this 5-page memorandum. And from what it reads like to me, and I'm not a legal expert on this, it looks like it's being provided at no cost. No one's going to be spending any money. And I think it was on the first page of this guy. Let me just take a look here. There has been whereas there been no expenditure. Man, they can't even get good grammar. Whereas there been no expenditure of public funds or agreement to expend public funds prior to the execution of this agreement, and no public funds are expended or agreed to be expended upon. They haven't spent any according to their bad grammar. Not that I'm a grammar Nazi at all, but that's pretty bad for an official agreement from the Attorney General of the state. So they haven't spent and there is no plans to do so. They're not supposed to. So I believe they're providing it for free. Utah is going to be a test ground for this. And going on. This is what Reyes has to say. Because the imaging technology identifies objects. Again, this is kind of leading me to what are they really using this for? Rather than the people carrying them, Reyes said he believes it could be less invasive, say, than facial recognition technology or even driver's license scanners. So ALPRs, license plate scanners. I don't think they meant driver license scanners because the scanners that they use to track you and match your location with your person is an automated license plate reader that gets up to 1,800 pictures per minute. They're mounted on poles, red light cameras, like, for example, just banned in Texas, or mobily on top of police cars, or sometimes they put them on tripods, things like that. So you can put these all over the place. You can put them on a drone, for example. Same with the facial recognition, too. So he's saying this is less invasive because it's only looking at objects. We're not matching it with people. But that belies the fact that we know they're using that other type of technology in a growing number all over the place. We know that at least 200 law enforcement agencies in the entire country scanned through ALPR's 2.5 billion license plates over a 2-year period and then shared that information with everybody. So I don't think it takes too smart of a person to recognize that in Utah, they're probably using these things as well. They'll probably end up implementing facial recognition, and then they'll tell us, oh, but these are separate. We're not going to match it all together and figure out what object matches with which face. Never. They would never do something like that, right? We know that the income tax was only going to be the top third of a percent on the top third of a percent, and that's all it was ever going to be. It was going to fund a war effort and be gone. So when government institutes a program and they say it's just for the terrorists, or it's just going to be used in one way and it's never going to violate your privacy, you absolutely should trust them, right? We all have learned that trusting government is a very dangerous thing. So he goes on and says, if you can imagine an open place like Park City during Sundance, to be able to have a little more awareness of what, not who and what their identity is and where they live and what their driver license is, but what they might have on them and where that is, to make sure everybody is as safe as possible. So the Attorney General in gun-toting Utah, is telling us that people are more safe when government knows what, quote, what people might have on them. Again, they're not coming right out and saying it. The Attorney General, the government of Utah, isn't coming right out and saying it, but one only needs to look at the HEXWAVE promotional video, which I've pulled up here on YouTube from Liberty Defense. The title is HEXWAVE, Protecting Communities and Preserving Peace of Mind. All you have to do, this was published May 22nd, 2019, probably to go out with their press release that they put out, the joint press release with the AG of Utah, and it says, quote, with the serious nature of violent crime and acts of terrorism changing, along with the, quote, threat from concealed weapons on the rise, we at Liberty Defense are working hard to deliver a safer, more secure future for all of us. So isn't that interesting? This Liberty Defense Company, protecting liberty, at a time when we see more and more so-called constitutional or permitless carry bills being introduced and move forward in the states. At that time, over the past few years, we've seen more of that than we had in the previous 5-10 years. They say the threat from concealed weapons is on the rise. They are right out in the open about what they're doing. There's no secret about this. And that's how I just started seeing these clues of what they were talking about in the report, what the AG was saying. And then all it took was literally I should just do a YouTube search. It's the second largest search engine on Earth. So why not just do a YouTube search for HEXWAVE? And this is the first video that popped up. It's brand new. It is the official video of the technology. And the fact of the matter is, while they may be saying that they're going to use it for terrorism, there's two things. There's two things they're using for: terrorism and concealed carry. I think that should say quite a bit about what's really, really happening. And I did an episode covering this type of thing, again, back in November 28th, 2018. The title of the episode was, Is Concealed Carry Really Concealed? Thermal Imaging Surveillance. So I was actually doing an episode on facial recognition, and in that episode prior to this one was talking about I wonder if they're going to be able to use this type of thing. And someone had asked about it. Can they use this to detect a concealed firearm? And I was thinking, I don't know. So I did some research and I found all the technology that's been tested on this. Now we see a very similar. I don't think this was a company that we covered in this. We covered FLIR, we covered PET scan, thermal vision, thermal matrix. You can see all the links on that one in that particular episode show notes. But this is something that we've talked about on this program in the past as a really dangerous threat to the right to keep and bear arms. Because if people like the Attorney General of Utah and Liberty Defense are saying that concealed weapons is a threat that's on the rise, We know government just wants to know exactly who's carrying what. They don't like concealed weapons. They don't like concealed carry. They don't like permanent. They don't like you having the right to keep and bear arms without them monitoring you, knowing who you are, what you own, having a permission slip that they can revoke whenever they deem is necessary. For example, here in Los Angeles, I believe that there were about, just in the city of Los Angeles, I think there's a total of like somewhere between 20 and 50 of these concealed carry permits that were issued decades ago. And they were only issued because of a lawsuit that actually said these people really need it. They live in areas where high crime, so they established an emergency need to any restrictions on their ability to do that. And here it is a couple decades later. Everyone's a little bit older. I think they're all alive still. They still have these permits. They were lifetime, or maybe they had to be renewed. I don't know. But the current sheriff, or maybe it was the head of the LAPD, is on a crusade to take these permits away from these people here in LA, the few people who can actually do it. Maybe it's 100. I don't know what the number is, but it's a very small number in a place that has somewhere between 13 and 15 or 18 million residents. So there's not many who have a permission slip from government in Los Angeles. City is about 3 to 4 million, but the whole metro area is massive. So after a couple of decades, now because there's a permission slip, that leaves a foot in the door, an opening in the door, so they could shove their foot in there and try to revoke those. Say, well, the whatever the law enforcement agent, the head of that, whatever the agency was, whether it's sheriff or police department, is basically saying, the circumstances that were around for when these people needed this are now gone, and none of them actually deserve to have this license anymore. So we know that government all over the place, you may think, oh yeah, just in you Californians, you're ruining it for everybody. The Attorney General of Utah is supposedly one of the best right to keep and bear arms states in the country. And I know there's going to be some debate from Texan friends and Arizonans and others who say they're way better, but it's clearly head and shoulders above a place like New York State or here in California. And if even those people are actually using equipment that is made specifically to deal with the, quote, threat from concealed weapons, how bad is it going to be in a place like LA? I guess maybe it can't even get worse. Surprise, surprise, though, who's actually the one standing up on this? Now, they're not necessarily doing it for the same reason that I would. I think there are multiple reasons. I think there are privacy issues here, but there are also right to keep and bear arm issues. And those of us who support the Constitution, and those of you in Utah who support the Constitution of Utah, now I haven't read it, so I'm not sure which clauses this is attacking in Utah, the right to be free from invasive warrantless searches, the right to be free from government violation of your right to keep and bear arms. I'm not sure what that is in the Utah Constitution. But you basically have these two things converging. Now, maybe some gun rights groups are only opposed to something like this, and I didn't find who is actually making a stand on it yet. If we need to, I'll look into it further. But I would suspect that some gun rights groups are just only on board with stopping the violation of your right to keep and bear arms, but maybe okay with the mass surveillance to stop the terrorists. And the groups like ACLU are probably only concerned about the privacy issues. And the statements that I read from ACLU say nothing about the right to keep and bear arms. My personal view, and I may be wrong, is that the ACLU has, and I think I've read this in the past, they actually like the idea of more background checks, more knowing, more licensing, more restrictions on the right to keep and bear arms at the same time where they don't want the additional surveillance. But they think that what they're not recognizing is that their anti-gun stance, or the anti-gun stance of some of their supporters, or maybe a lot of them, or that is actually just pervasive, is going to lead to more surveillance. Because as you have people carrying concealed, what do you do to figure out what's going on? You need more surveillance. So they're shooting themselves in the foot on an issue that they're actually pretty good on, pretty consistently. So here in the Deseret News, ACLU says Utahns didn't sign up to be guinea pigs for Attorney General approved scanner testing. And I think they take a very good position on this. Not amazing, but good. They say, quote, this is from John Meha, who is the legal director of the ACLU of Utah. They say, we are concerned about the lack of detail and public input behind the Utah Attorney General's decision to sign an agreement that promotes testing of an experimental see-through 3D body scanner by Utah law enforcement in our state. People attending sporting events, festivals, and school campuses in Utah didn't sign up to be guinea pigs to find defects in a private company's surveillance system. So, I mean, you get a couple of pieces of the puzzle there of their views. Their concern is private companies are bad. As long as it has oversight, it's less bad. Government should have the oversight. So I think their core principles are off. So it leads them only to partly the right statement on this, that this is privacy violating. The problem, though, is government can't be trusted. Government is restricted from doing these types of things. They're supposed to be. And you should oppose them whether you like guns or not, whether you own one or I don't own one, but I want anybody else who wants to own one to own one. And they call it, again, the airportization of American life, where everyone is told to expect less privacy and more government surveillance will erode our constitutional rights to privacy and protection, and this technology puts us further along that path. Of course, it's not a constitutional right. We have a natural right to keep and bear arms, to defend ourselves, our property, our family, as a defense against standing armies. I did an episode on that recently as well. But we also have a right to be free from government searches. If you're not suspected of doing something wrong, the idea that, I guess a lot of people turned a blind eye to the idea of TSA pat-downs and scanners. There was some resistance to it. I still don't go through it. I take a pat-down, an unconstitutional pat-down, because I don't want that scanner. But people still go through it. It's the convenience or the belief that it provides some kind of false security, or that it actually provides security, but it is false. And then, of course, that's going to expand. We know, same with facial recognition. They were only going to use this for border crossings. They're only going to use this for international travel, to stop terrorists, to know who's coming in and out of the country. But it's going to be expanded all over the place. We know the TSA wants to put it everywhere in airports. We know that multiple large cities are implementing it. And Amazon, for example, is really pushing other government agencies to pick up their technology and just run with it. So the same thing, I believe, will happen on this type of technology. And of course, going back to what Liberty Defense says specifically, the threat from concealed weapons is on the rise. And I have to keep repeating that, because we know if that's their goal, then they're going to be tweaking their system to make sure, and they're going to be selling it to government agencies under that message. And any government who's taking this, we know, I mean, this is their public statement about it. This is what it's made for. Any government who takes it and uses it is opposed to concealed weapons, period. And this is just the last link I have here that I think is just interesting. It is from the official statement from the Utah Attorney General last month. They have a picture from Liberty Defense, and they say whether it's using new technology to speed up DNA testing or capturing real-time intel to solve kidnappings, our office helps Utah live up to its reputation as an innovative, tech-friendly state that respects constitutional freedoms. Man, I don't know how anybody can trust these people. Anyways, looking over at the live chat, some really, really interesting questions. I saw somebody post here, I wonder where they got their funding. I am not sure. I see a lot of really good conversation back and forth. Like Ward Lawrence says, it surprises me that Utah would allow themselves to be the testing ground. Yeah, of all places, right? But clearly the AG is unilaterally doing this. And I think when individuals have a lot of power in government, it's going to attract really bad people to those positions. And then they're going to eventually use it in ways that you don't want to, even if for a while it seems like they may be good guys. I think eventually they all end up doing this. Yeah, there was a question in there that I saw, or just a comment someone had said, and I'm just must have flown by me, and all the people that are leaving comments. Thank you all for so much for leaving the comments. I will look probably after the show in more detail, so I'm not just kind of reading and scanning here. But someone had said, I wonder if they got some kind of DOD funding. I wouldn't be surprised. I haven't looked into it. If anybody wants to take a look and send an email to team@10thamendmentcenter.com, I'd be very interested in knowing, and I'm sure either myself, Mike Meharry, or TJ Martinell, TJ does a lot of our Right to Keep and Bear Arms blogging and reporting, would love to know about this. Bob Brewer says, welcome to the plantation. Larry Mott says, stalking is illegal unless the government is doing it. And Larry, if you have not seen my episode from last week, Friday, I know you're on Facebook, so it's a little bit harder to find. previous episodes, but YouTube is way easy. YouTube.com/10th Amendment Center. You can see last week, Friday's episode. It's a short 12-minute one covering 4 top ways that government is stalking people through surveillance technology. I think you'll find that pretty interesting. Bill Stannard says, is it using millimeter wave tech? Is it about time one made a millimeter emitter that clouds these? I'm not sure. And I know millimeter has basically been the one that was primarily used by the TSA. I'm not sure what Liberty Defense. Man, I hate calling it that, but it is absurd. It really. Melody over on YouTube says, wonder who owns Liberty Defense, ex-NSA, ex-FBI. A lot of times that's the way it works too. They either go right into the lobbying industry or they start a defense contractor business, and then they have the contacts on the inside to actually push these things forward and make a ton of cash off the violation of your rights. And then, of course, Bill is correct, and you have an anti-gun GOP POTUS. Yeah, I mean, anyone who's attacking things like with the bump stock ban, redefining things as machine guns under an unconstitutional federal act that was passed in 1934, you've got a really bad place. And mind you, this is the NRA-backed president. What's it going to be like with a President Kamala or a President Bernie or whoever, President Biden? I mean, can you imagine what they're going to use this type of technology for? The founders always told us, do not turn a blind eye. George Washington warned about this very, very strongly. Turn a blind eye today. Even if it seems like a good idea or you like the team in charge in the short term, eventually someone's going to use this power against you. We had warnings from John Dickinson, George Washington, John Adams, Harry Brown, who I learned so much in more recent times. He basically says any power that you give to government to do something you like is going to be used by someone in the future in ways that you don't like. So you have to think about the long-term impacts. Dan Reed is probably right. I had mentioned, I don't know if it can get any worse here in Southern California on the right to keep and bear arms. He said, no, never say it can't get worse. And you're totally right. I was absolutely wrong in even saying maybe it can't, because I hammer on this all the time, especially when I hear from conservative friends who say, well, it's not going, that kind of thing can't happen here. I hear that more often from friends on the right than I do on the left. I mean, maybe I'm not communicating as clearly, but yeah. So Melody says over in Maine, constitutional carry is, quote, the right of the citizen to carry shall not be questioned. That's pretty amazing. And of course, if you're keeping a database, if you're combining that, something like that, with the idea that your person's house and papers and effects shall not be searched or seized, this is a search. And then, of course, they're seizing an image of you and putting it in a database and monitoring where you're going. You think they're not going to match that with gait identification, how you walk, which is a part of their facial recognition technology? I think anyone who doesn't expect that is nuts. Justin Bayola says, in Utah, they have the sheriff and city PDs all wrapped up in one department in some areas. Not sure about the constitutionality of that. That's interesting. Tyler B., great question. Are we free men or slaves? And again, I appreciate all the interesting feedback, really great commentary back and forth in the live chat, both on Facebook and YouTube and elsewhere. If you have any other thoughts, please, whether it's live or in the archive, please continue to leave them in the comments. Feel free to email me over at team@10thamendmentcenter.com. I hope you found this educational, interesting, fun to watch, all that good stuff. I'm very grateful for you spending a little bit of time with me today. Again, I'll be back on Friday morning for our next episode of the Fast Friday edition. It's a 10 to 15-minute edition of the show. I will be off on Monday and then back again on the Monday, Wednesday, Friday schedule after that. I really appreciate you spending some time with me today. I hope you have a great Wednesday, and I'll see you here on Friday at Good Morning Liberty. Have a great day.